Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Customer Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, The Cloud Advantage, Why Small Businesses Are Embracing Cloud Hosting, presented by Noah Corwick. Before we get started, let's go over some housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can submit any questions you have. If you'd like to submit a question, look for the question section or the chat box of your GoToWebinar, and we'll answer all questions at the end of the presentation. In your GoToWebinar panel, you also have the option to change your presentation layout, participate in the chat, or ask questions. We'll also be doing polls throughout this at the end of this webinar, so we would appreciate your participation in our poll and closing survey. We're also recording this presentation, and it will be distributed tomorrow to all attendees, as well as those who registered but were not able to attend today. With that said, we're thrilled that you've taken some time out of your busy day to be with us on this session. SWK is here to help you fulfill your vision of a smarter and easier way to run your business by providing you with tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. So whether you're here to explore a new solution or you're just here to learn, don't hesitate to ask any questions you have. And as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. Check us out and give us a follow on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube so you don't miss out. Okay, that's enough for me. Let's hand it over to Noah for the main event.
Appreciate that. Thank you so much. Hey everybody, it's great to meet you today on this Wednesday. I am Noah Corwick. I'm an account executive here at SWK. I have over 9 years of experience with helping clients and businesses of all shapes and sizes partner in moving to the cloud, as well as consulting on managed IT services, Office 365 deployment, cybersecurity professional services, and honestly, just overall IT challenges. It's the fun about IT, ranges in a lot of subjects I've been able to touch on and love talking about. So it's great to meet everyone today. Quick agenda recap. So we're going to start with the introduction to the cloud, what software or data can be hosted, the age-old debate, cloud versus on-prem, what support looks like in the cloud security, what we find as our clients' favorite aspects about the cloud, questions to ask hosting providers if you're looking to potentially move to the cloud or make a switch to another cloud provider, recap and key takeaways, and a poll and Q&A. And like we said, send questions our way throughout. More the merrier. Quick overview on SWK Technologies. We're a nationally ranked MSP and solutions provider in North America and have nationwide coverage, leveraging over 170 employees, honestly closer to 190 at this point, to delight our customers and enable success. Now let's get into it. All right, to start this webinar, I thought it'd be a good idea to set a baseline for what the cloud really is. It's funny because this makes me reflect back on when I started talking to clients and businesses about the cloud. When I first started, it was the great buzzword, right? The buzzword of mystery, like what is the cloud, referenced in many movies and just social media and whatnot. And when I first started, a lot of it was, can you help me with my iCloud? Like the iCloud was like the cloud back then, and it's kind of funny to see where we've come. iCloud is specific to Apple, of course, but really, what is the cloud? So what the cloud is instead of your software or applications or data sitting in a physical office, on a physical server or a physical computer, it's placed in servers managed by professionals, which are typically housed in data centers and accessed over the internet. So this means you wouldn't have to actually manage the physical hardware that your applications or data resides on any longer. And you see the image to the right with the nice, pretty blue cloud there. That's for any visual learners, which I am myself. Hopefully this paints a good picture, right? So your device, your computer can be any device, even a Mac for all my Mac users out there. As long as you have a working device and internet access that is, of course, turned on and working, you're able to access your data in applications in an environment placed on more so virtual servers there. And all of that combined is what they call the cloud. So there's a couple different cloud types out there. One of the ones I want to dedicate on, pun intended, is dedicated cloud solutions. Um, paints it pretty well. So a dedicated cloud solution is essentially your own slice of the pie. It's your stuff with your data and your users in for you and your business. It allows for more customization, performance, and security. So an extreme example, as opposed a dedicated cloud, as opposed to something called a like a true multi-tenant or server farm, where you're sharing resources and sharing space and sharing stuff. In the server farm scenario, the client uploads a corrupted file, they're going to have a rough day on their hands, but you are too, because you're essentially sharing infrastructure, as opposed to a dedicated environment where it's dedicated to you and your information. That same client, they'll have a fun, air quotes, fun time on their hands, but it's not going to affect you because, again, you are away from them. So dedicated cloud is definitely, and I'm biased, probably the way to go for a cloud solution. Um, a analogy, or to paint the picture a little bit more, I call it my lockbox analogy. So let's say your data and your software are money in this regard, right? And let's say your server is a bank vault. Now, in the multi-tenant or server farm, the shared point of view, all of the money is put inside of a bank vault, let's say. If someone gets into the bank vault or money catches on fire somehow, it's going to affect everyone, right? Because everyone's shared within that space. Now, on a dedicated solution, same scenario, but every business's money is put inside of a lockbox. That's all obviously already inside of a bank vault. So the bank vault protection, if something acts as the bank vault, you're going to have the protection there with your lockbox. If an individual lockbox gets, a fun day on their hand and something happens, it's not going to affect you because you're totally isolated from them. So hopefully that paints a little bit more of a vivid picture here. Sorry, I don't have a image for that. Um, there's also different types of hosting, which of applications compared to data. So the more common ones that we hear, Dropbox, OneDrive, you might use them for your business or just for personal use. And Dropbox and OneDrive are great, but they're just for the individual databases. They're not hosting your full-on software. So let's say you put a Sage company file or a QuickBooks company file in a OneDrive or a Dropbox, you try to open it, unless you have the software installed, it's not going to know what to do with it, as compared to application hosting, right? Where it's hosting your data and your software. So same scenario, if a hosting provider is hosting your Sage 100 company or Sage 100 software, you open your company data in there, everything's going to open up. So application hosting is the data and the software. Who owns what? I'm going to touch upon this a lot throughout this webinar and conversation, but I'm going to keep it very black and white. There's software providers that lease their software, but I'm going to keep it black and white. If hosting providers do things ethically, they don't own your data, they don't own your software. That's your proprietary information. We always say your data is your livelihood. Again, it's your stuff. They are leasing the infrastructure, right? The cool blue cloud, but they don't own your data, they don't own your software. So moving on, so now we talk about different types of clouds, but what are the type of software that can be hosted? We break it down into three main categories. There's desktop software, there's hybrid software, there's web-based software. So desktop software is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It can be installed on a desktop or server. Hybrid software is a combination of both. It has a desktop component, but it also has a cloud component. An example of this that we see fairly often is there's the main software installed on the computer, and then there's like a cloud backup that comes along with the software provided by the software provider. There's also ones where the main software is local and then it has a different like routing app or different sort of like plugin that ties into it. And it's web-based, which we'll go into here in a sec. So those comes in different like shapes and sizes, not one size fit all for hybrid software solutions. And then there's full-on web-based software. That's 100% already in the cloud, already web-based. An example of that is QuickBooks Online, if you're familiar with QuickBooks. And those can't be hosted because it's already hosted. You can't inception it, if that makes sense. So what software and data can be hosted? Well, the easiest answer to that is most desktop software. Really, the rule of thumb, I'm going to get a little bit technical here for a second. If it's a Windows terminal server based software, it can more than likely it can be hosted. There are some exceptions, but let's just say for simplicity's sake, most desktop Windows software can be hosted. Hybrid software, a lot of them can be hosted too. It just takes some due diligence to see what the hybrid portion, how that communicates, right? The web-based software, it's already in the cloud. Can't really host it because it's already hosted. Third-party software, a lot of them fall into that hybrid where it connects to the main software, but some have a desktop install component to them. So those range as well. An example that, let's say all three of them actually, is Microsoft 365 or Office 365. You have the local component where you can have Outlook installed locally and Word, and you can have it on your computer. You can also have hybrid where that same scenario, but you have it backed up or synced to OneDrive. And then you can use it as a full-on web-based solution where you can go to Office 365 website and then access that way. So it's a good example of all three there. All right. In my opinion, the meats and potatoes of this conversation, the age-old debate, cloud versus on-premise. So I think a good place to start with this is, why there was hesitancy. There's a lot of different factors that go on with this. It was truly at one point the unknown. Again, it was a buzzword. It's like what really was the cloud was the running joke. It was an unknown commodity. There was also thinkings because it was unknown of, okay, I'm going to partner with this hosting provider. I don't have control over anything anymore. Or my data is now the hosting providers. People would even say, I won't get hacked. My security is totally fine, which, I kind of look at that, kind of use examples as the physical touch factor that goes along with that portion. That's another thing that people were hesitant about. People like things that they can touch, and it just gives them more of the warm and fuzzies. And if they have a physical server there, they can touch it and hear it running and breathe and see the electricity running into it, and just, makes them feel better. But just because it makes it feel better doesn't mean it's as efficient or as safe. So looking at it for any of my music buffs out there, I kind of compare this to, I'm going to use CD/vinyl, the physical music source versus an MP3 comparison. So the CD or vinyl is more on the on-premise side. Obviously, it's awesome, and you can, touch it, and there's cool artwork that comes along with it. But what happens if you drop it? What happens if you misplace your vinyl or CD? What happens if your record player doesn't work anymore and it gets old, or you scratch it or whatnot? Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to run as efficiently as compared to an MP3 comparison for the cloud, where you can access on any device. It's easily accessible. There's multiple platforms. You can even look at like the cool like music credits and really dive into the back end of things. And if the MP3 is updated, or the WAV file or whatever they use is updated, then you get the benefit of that, and it updates automatically, and you'll never really know in the best way possible. So I always like to use that comparison there. But there was also questions about the costs of moving to the cloud, and we'll kind of go into that here in a second. But again, physical touch factor and it just being the unknown, I'd say would be huge, two huge factors. So cost control and predictability. One of the things that small businesses embraced is understanding exactly what they're going to be charged, embracing predictable cost every month or if they pay annually every year. What's cool about the cloud is, let's say things happen, you acquire a company and you need to add users, or vice versa, things happen, you need to reduce users. You have the cost control. You know exactly what you're going to be billed each and every month. And again, that provides predictability as opposed to on-premise environments that have unexpected costs. Servers don't work a good bit if you don't maintain it. So making sure it's maintained. If electricity goes out, if your licensing needs renewal, if your hardware is going end of life or end of warranty, you know, there's if on the computer side, if you don't necessarily have a server, there's the screens of death that happen. It's just a lot of unexpected costs that can go along with this Microsoft licensing. It's a whole thing. On the same note, moving to the cloud provides an operating expense or an OpEx model compared to a capital expenditure CapEx model. OpEx model to get more predictable, more control, it's easier to notate from an accounting standpoint. It's typically looked at as a more thumbs up approach to IT as opposed to a very large sum every so often, not very predictable CapEx model. Every accounting department's different, right? But the majority that we talk to really do like that OpEx and embrace it. There's also cost savings. So I kind of touched upon this a little bit, but moving to the cloud is typically less expensive than an on-premise server due to not having to pay for an expensive new server every 3 to 5 years. Like if you're getting a mid-tier or an enterprise server, it's not cheap. It's not cheap. You're buying the hardware itself, obviously, but you're also buying the Windows Server licensing, the user cal licensing, the backup solution, the security solution, possible SQL licensing, and a bunch of other stuff, but also experience tech to service the environment. And then even the cost of the electricity powering everything. If that server does go down, you're also paying for that. So I like to ask the question, how much is downtime worth to your business? So let's do a quick mental exercise. Won't take too long. So how much does your business generate per average a week? I'm going to leave that there for a few moments. Nice round numbers are fine. You don't need exacts. Now, let's divide that number by 40 since there are 40 hours in a work week. That's how much your business is making per hour. Now imagine you have 1 hour of downtime a week. How much money is that actually costing your business per month? Dare I ask, what does that cost per year? Moving to the cloud reduces the percentage of downtime occurring due to SLA requirements that hosting providers have to adhere to, and you get the benefit of. Plus, if your internet goes down at the office, you can work from home or even a Starbucks. It's pretty cool. Opens up things mightily overall. It also does require, moving to the cloud requires less management from you compared to more management from you in an on-prem solution. One of the huge benefits is you don't have to worry about the infrastructure. That's what the cloud provider is there for. The back end on the server running healthfully. If there are server resources need to be needed, the cloud provider can point it out to you. On the security side, which we'll go into, they manage it. Add or remove users, things that we talked about. Compared to more management from you, you need to make sure that your Windows licensing's up to date, servers running correctly, you have the backup solution in place. You need to make sure that if you have remote access to your employees, that there's VPN setups. There's more that goes along with it. And you tend to wear more of an IT hat, where small or a lot of businesses are, I I want to worry about the stuff that I want to worry about. I want to worry about running the business or running the accounting department or, whatever the main task is. There's easy scalability with moving to the cloud. I like to use tax practices as the best example of this. It's very common that let's say during tax season, they could scale up to 20 or 30 users or a lot of users, let's say. During slow season, they don't need that many users. They can scale down. And that goes back to cost control and predictability, right? You're easily able to add or remove things. New versions of Sage, a new years of Sage or QuickBooks or software, insert software here sort of thing. Even on servers, if you acquire a business and you need to spin up another virtual server, you're able to do that very easily by contacting your cloud provider. This is a simple ticket or a phone call, as opposed to a painful scalability. You need to factor in joining users at the domain level, making sure it's connected within the network, making sure you have enough licenses, you have enough resources within the server to spin up a new virtual environment. There's a bunch of different stuff that goes along with it. So makes it easy moving to the cloud. Around the clock support. Businesses don't sleep, and your cloud provider shouldn't either. So having a deep bench of support that's essentially baked into your normal hosting is becoming very important that we find. Having specialists that are great at multifaceted issues that go along with the cloud and not just for one specific thing. Having, again, a deep bench as opposed to limited support. If you have a IT person, one or two IT people on staff that, wear a couple different hats, they're also in operations and doing this and this, it's not necessarily their specialty. Are they really looking at things 24/7? Are they really understanding the solution that needs to be had, or is it more of a band-aid or a temporary fix? They also need to sleep. They can't monitor things 24/7. They're human beings, right? So having around the clock support's a huge one that we find um, for the age-old debate here. There's also compliance and security. Look, security probably changed 5 times during this brief conversation so far. Um, it's ever changing. So keeping up to date with everything and the security tools in place is becoming not even just a need, it's a requirement at this point. We find businesses are acknowledging that, and it's, again, hard to keep up with. So moving to the cloud helps with that. Then easy access from anywhere. You don't have to work for an on-prem server. You have to typically set up like a VPN connection or a log me in session, and maintaining a VPN is not the most easy. And if it's not maintained correctly or well, it can be very clunky and you lose efficiency. As opposed to easy access for the cloud, you have a computer that works, have internet that's mid home or business internet, and you'll be just fine. From a support standpoint here, we touched upon it a little bit to go into slightly more. Look, a person is a human being, like we said, right? They get sick, take PTO, go on vacation, get married, get burned out, go through life. I guess we can say it's also impossible for any one person to be a master of all IT. For example, just because you know how to fix a computer does not mean you are a ninja at cybersecurity. They are two completely different skill sets. So relying on a single person to do everything could stretch your IT thin. And that's opposed to a team, right? Team philosophy. We have specialists capable of helping with all sorts of crazy and random scenarios around the clock. And are obligated to be there for you. Your favorite cloud tech goes on a vacation, that's okay. There are other very capable technicians that can fill in their shoes. There's 24/7 US monitoring. This is big. Again, one of the reasons why businesses love the cloud is because people naturally can go to sleep and aren't great multitaskers makes it tough for 24/7 for a small IT team. Adding the cloud team whose sole responsibility is to watch your environment around the clock will allow you to have the peace of mind knowing someone has your back proactively, addressing possible issues before they become large. On that note, proactive versus reactive. Because the cloud team is watching your environment 24/7, it allows them to catch or notice things before they affect your business. This can be low disk space or server resources being overextended, as opposed to a reactive approach where you have to contact an IT provider or team and they provide more of a band-aid or temporary fix to issues and don't get to the real issue at hand. It's also cost savings. Look, I'll tell you, a level 2 or a level 3 technician who really knows their stuff and is like a ninja at their craft, it's not a cheap employee. They're going to be a healthy salary on your books, plus all the benefits and that you might typically pay employees too. So again, not cheap. If you hire one, if you hire more than one, it's actually going to be obviously going to be even worse, right? Working with a cloud provider saves businesses money because they get that all baked in to the normal hosting costs. Plus, they get more than one or two people. Again, you get a whole bench. Cloud security, mentioned this topic quite a few times because it's super important. um, I'd like to start with move over Norton antivirus. A lot of times we talk with businesses and they have like we ask, hey, what is your security look like? And they're like, we have Norton and we have Windows Defender that comes with all Windows devices. But we find that having the best tools in place from an enterprise security standpoint cannot becoming the norm, it's a necessity. Keeping up with everything is crucial. Moving to the cloud, it's a burden you don't have to burden alone. But the tool sets are great and obviously are needed, but the back end team is really what differentiates security teams overall. In the security world, it's called Security Operations Center or SOC teams. Think of like security support pretty much. So having a team that's there for you 24/7, taking a look at logs and monitoring things is crucial. And again, just another reason why businesses are embracing the cloud. Multi-factor authentication or MFA or 2FA goes by a couple different names there, is becoming very key too, where you log into an application, you get a code via your email or your phone to put in that code to access things, or face recognition. That's becoming a norm, and cloud providers are starting to um, provide that. Not all, but it's also a really great tool. Backups. If you don't have access to if something happens, you don't have access to your data, which is your livelihood, it's a security breach, in my opinion. So having backup solutions that are done, I would say at least once a day, that's a healthy amount. You can always do them more, but making sure your stuff is backed up, not just your main software stuff, but any Excel spreadsheets, PDFs, file server information. That's typically included within a cloud solution. User management. Unfortunately, you let someone go within your business. They're a remote employee. You don't cut things off at the email level, the 365 level, the server level. You let them go, but they still have their workstation. They can still access their stuff. That's a breach, right? So moving to the cloud's an easy way that businesses are able to negate that, where they tell the hosting provider, hey, unfortunately, we've let Bill and Susan go, and then they cut off access there, and your bill is affected accordingly. And then the peace of mind. Look, if you love IT and love security, keep that hat, but you don't have to keep that hat if you don't want to. It's always good practice too, obviously, but you don't have to be a security ninja and keeping in line with all the news and stuff going on in the security world. You get the peace of mind knowing it's taken care of for you. So again, I've been doing this for quite a bit. SWK has as well, obviously, and we compile the list of questions that we find are our clients' favorite aspects about the cloud. The first two, they could be interchanged, 1A, 1B. These are by far the two biggest. It's anytime access from anywhere, from any device. Again, for all my Mac users out there, you can access the PC version of Sage or QuickBooks or, insert software here. For the people that, love their work, you can be on vacation. Hopefully you're not accessing too much on vacation, but if you have a hotspot or Wi-Fi connection, access from your personal tablet device and then input the thing you forgot to input before you left, sort of a situation, right? So you're able to access from anywhere as long as you have an internet connection and a working device, and it makes the world your virtual workforce. You get the idea. You get the benefit of updates and upgrades to software environment being done for you in one fell swoop. So a lot of times we hear businesses that have a software installed on, let's say, all 20 of their employees' workstations. They have to go to each individual workstation, coordinate the update for the software or the Windows update, and they try to do it within the same time parameters, so everyone's using the same version of the software and whatnot, and it can be a logistical nightmare and just frustration and headache. Lose a lot of hair because of it. Moving to the cloud eliminates that, because if there's a Windows update, it affects all users in your environment. Same with software. So it's just easier for everyone. No VPN or log me in setup or maintenance. Again, VPNs, when aren't maintained correctly, produce very much of frustration and just hard access, remotely accessing things. Log me in, you have to make sure that computer is always on. It kind of hijacks that computer from everyone else. You have to coordinate when any other person not being on there, and it's just it tests communication, let's put it that way. So not having to worry about that, each user having their own distinct username and password, accessing the solution just makes, again, everything easier for everyone. And then scalability. Easy as call the hosting provider, hey, I need to add this, this, and this. They'll set a good time frame from you, and boom, it's added. Makes it that easy. So questions asked hosting providers. All hosting providers are not made equal. They do things a little bit differently, and that's okay, but you just need to ask the right questions. Knowledge is power, right? So the first one, and I believe is the most important, is, do you offer dedicated hosting? Do they offer the customization and the efficiency and the security that comes with dedicated hosting? Or is it more of a server farm or multi-tenant environment? Dedicated hosting is always going to be slightly more expensive than multi-tenant, right? But you reduce downtime, you reduce risk, and it's just, again, peace of mind overall. What is your experience with hosting my software? Just because a hosting provider is great at hosting QuickBooks doesn't mean they're great at hosting Sage or Lacert or Great Plains or SAP, right? Insert software here. Making sure you understand their experience with hosting your software is key. And what they do to help software wise. Do they offer software support? Do they do the updates, things like that? Is your support team onshore? We've all had those times where talking to an offshore support team not speaking the same language, and it's hard to kind of bridge that language gap. So making sure they're US based is very important for everyone's sanity. How do you handle security issues? Some hosting providers are just that, hosting providers. Some have a security arm of the business that you get the benefit of. So understanding what happens if you click on something you're not supposed to, or other clients, how that affects you. Is pricing scalable? How do they price overall? Is it per user? Is it per core or CPU? Is it per usage or utilization? So understanding that. And then the tax company example, can you have 20 users and then reduce it down to 10 in a given month? So understanding that is a big one that might affect you now or might affect you in the future. But how do you incorporate with third-party software integrations? Might be a software, you're great, you're using QuickBooks now, and it's working just fine, and your business grows. And you need to work with a random third-party software. How do they work with that? What does that look like? Are they open to that? A lot aren't. And I've seen this bite companies in the butt where 2 years from then, from years from they go on board, they're like, oh, I need to use this, but my hosting provider won't allow me to host it. Now I need to move. You just save yourself time and frustration in the long run. All right, so recap and takeaways from the webinar. The cloud is no longer scary and an unknown. It's a known commodity. A lot of businesses are embracing it, and it's not as scary. It's okay that you can't touch it. It's there to work on your behalf in a secure, efficient manner. Most desktop software and data can be hosted. Again, rule of thumb, if it's a Windows-based software, it can be installed on a terminal server. More than likely, it can be hosted. Your software and your data are yours. Any hosting provider says it's not, they're not doing things ethically, and you should not work with them. Data is yours. Always remember that. Cost control and predictability. You can control if users are added and removed, and you'll know what your bill is going to reflect accordingly and predictably. Shed your IT hat unless you don't want to. If you love IT, don't shed it. Keep it on. But if you don't want to, you don't have to worry about maintaining servers and making sure the backup solutions backing things up and the security on the server. Hosting provider has your back, or hosting has your back. Work with a 24/7 US team, not a single point of failure. Having a bench behind you at any weird, crazy hour, or even on any crazy holiday, having the peace of mind that someone's there for you, watching you when they need you, when you need them, is key. Increase security. Again, it probably changed 10 more times during this call, but you gain security protocols, tools, and measures that you might not have currently. And again, not all hosting providers are made even. Some charge differently, some don't offer third-party application, some offer different ways of accessibility and don't work with your software. So asking the right questions and know what's the best fit is very important. And SWK is available to provide a helping hand if needed. On the cloud hosting side, also on help desk for computer issues or network management, cybersecurity, consulting, and disaster recovery, and a bunch of other fun IT stuff that we'd love to talk with you about and can talk with you about. With this webinar, because you attended, which we very much appreciate, we're offering a free hosting consultation. Learn more about our bonus incentives for attending the webinar. I'm going to pass it back to the team here for some poll questions and Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you, Noah. So before we dive into Q&A, we just have a quick poll we'd like to ask you. So would you like to take advantage of that offer for the free hosting meeting, or would you like to be contacted with more information in general? So thank you for everyone who has participated in the poll so far, and we're going to leave that open for just a bit longer. And then we will be going into our Q&A in just a second. So if you haven't had a chance to get your question in yet, you can get your question in the question section of your GoToWebinar panel, and then Noah will answer those in just a minute. Okay. Thank you everyone for responding. So Noah, let's dive into Q&A.
Perfect.
So our first question is, what makes SWK's hosting different from other cloud hosting options?
Good question. Good first question for sure. The couple that come to mind that I would say would be dedicated hosting. Not everyone offers it, but we truly believe it's just crucial if you're going to move to the cloud. If you're going to move to the cloud, do it right, right? So offering dedicated hosting solutions, even on the even more custom side, we offer an infrastructure as a service or an IaaS cloud for things that need to be even more granular, or you have a ton of users. Environments come with a very healthy amount of server resources. So a lot of times hosting providers enticed with low prices, but you have to add additional CPU and RAM and storage and server resources, and it gets expensive, right? So server resources come included. We have a security staff and specialist already on staff. And you saw from the last slide, right? We do cloud. It's been our bread and butter, but we're not just a cloud solution provider. We have security specialists on staff able to help with things if things are detected and making sure you have the proper tools in place. On that note, MFA, a lot of host providers don't provide it. It's becoming very, very important. So multi-factor authentication is included. We mentioned backing backups. Backing up at least one time a day is great, but we back up 3 times a day, which a lot of providers don't. And then my last one's very specific, but if there are any CPA, bookkeeper, or accounting folk on the call, being able to offer what I call a financial professional portal, being able to access your clients from one distinct uh, location. Client A and client B don't know that either exists. If you have an overseeing eye on each one, it makes your life easier working with your accounting clients overall. So just a few there that come to mind. Great question.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, when is it the best time to migrate to the cloud?
There's one that pops in my head immediately. I'll summarize it in two overall though. I would say the best time is probably during a hardware refresh, where again you've had that server for longer than its normal extended life or shelf life. And the question is, well, do I buy a new expensive piece of hardware or do I move to the cloud? It's a great excuse for spring cleaning if there's data files that you don't need on there, and moving to the cloud makes it that much easier, when things are kind of looked at from all different angles from that side. But not having to worry about, again, the CapEx that we talked about too, right? It just makes it very ideal because you need to do something anyway. So hardware refresh. The other one, which again, I'm gonna knock on wood, doesn't happen to anyone or hasn't happened or will happen, is the security breach, where those are scary and obviously not very fun. But when that happens, moving to the cloud might be a great option, so you don't have to um, worry as much. You always worry about security, but worry as much about security, where the hosting provider has your back overall. So yeah, in summary, hardware refresh on a server or a security matter overall.
Thank you. Our audience also asked, how difficult or long does it typically take to migrate to the cloud?
Oh, that's a great one. Yeah, that's one of my favorite misconceptions. So yeah, kudos whoever asked that. Look, people have a fear of being down many days of moving to the cloud, and this answer is going to range between the software and user count, right? But I'm going to say for most medium-sized businesses, it's going to fall. But they have a fear of downtime because of it. In reality, you continue to work business per usual as the hosting provider is working on your solution. They're standing up the server, they're building out your users, putting Excel on there, working with your software that's going to be hosted. It's not going to deauthorize or do anything funky on your end. You're going to you can work as usual. The only real quote unquote downtime occurs when it's migrating your data, which is coordinated with you or can complete it on a weekend, for example. To use nice round numbers, like SWK, I can't speak for other hosting providers, obviously, but can have you up and running within a business week. And again, that's not a business week of downtime, very minimal. But it's not as hard or as complicated as a lot of people fear it'll be. It just takes communication, coordination, like any business relationship or partnership does. But yeah, nice round numbers, business week, can have you up and going. That's a great question.
Good to know. And I think, unless we have a last minute submission, I think this is going to be our last question of the webinar. So Does SWK offer any Office 365 support?
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah, we get this inquiry a lot, so it doesn't shock me to hear that. Like we mentioned, like there's there's all three components of 365. Some of it can be hosted, um, some of it's already all cloud-based and whatnot. But yeah, we certainly do. We actually save our uh, partners and clients alike a lot of money on the licensing instead of going directly to Microsoft. And we also offer support. For 20 users or more, we offer free support. If under 19, we can still offer the support because of the pricing per license that we can provide. It typically offsets it. So yeah, we can help set it up, coordinate, set up a SharePoint or a OneDrive, which is again kind of cloud-based. We can do a lot with SharePoint. Sorry, with 365. Definitely a trending topic around here at SWK.
Perfect. So that's our last question we have today. So actually, we got one last one, so I don't want to miss out on any questions. Our next question is, should you move to the cloud right after year end or not, I think?
Ooh, that's another good one. Look, that's going to be company to company. I've worked with a lot of, throughout my life, I've worked with a lot of tax firms and accounting firms and tax and accounting companies. It depends. Look, you need rest after, right? You're going to be tired from year end, so take some time to recharge. But I would say typically it is because things have slowed down, especially if your employee turnover is going to go down. If you have temporary employees for tax season, it's a really great time where it's just easier because there's less people involved. Um, if you do not move during busy season, it's just going to be a bit of a cluster, right? But yeah, during the off season, it's typically a really good time. But do it when you're comfortable and ready. Take some time, go on a vacation, live your life. But yeah, it's typically ideal, honestly.
Great. So I'm glad we were able to answer so many great questions during this Q&A session. Thank you, Noah, for a really informative and helpful presentation telling us all about cloud hosting. If you would like to take advantage of that free meeting on cloud hosting and how it can help your business, reach out to us at info@swktech.com. Let us know in the post-webinar survey or reach out to your account rep if you're already an SWK customer. So thank you all in the audience for taking time out of your day to be with us on this session. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you, everybody.